That's it. Done. Yes, please.
Well, it's all,
All right, next week.
yep, yep. Don't worry. Let's call the meeting to order.
Back there. Can't. Looks like I'm
All
on the air.
7 of us are present. Item 2, discuss and take necessary action on the fiscal year 2018-2019 City of Enid budget. Item 3, we will now recess to convene as the Enid Municipal Authority. All 7 of the trustees.
Mayor, we need to stop at number 2 so that we can discuss the budget for the city portion.
Keeping you on your toes. Thank you. Item 2,
Yes.
you are going to discuss and take necessary action on fiscal year 2018-2019. Aaron, the floor is all yours.
All right, thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm glad to be here with you tonight and get started on the budget document draft for next year's budget as presented by the city manager. As we start off, page 10 of your draft has an overview of the summary of revenues and expenditures for the year. And the totals this year are $154 million in budget revenue and budgeted expenses of $156 million. That's an increase in revenues of $11.4 million for the year and an increase in expenditures of $10.3 million for the year over last year's budget.
How much of that is the new sales tax?
None of that is sales tax related.
Okay.
And we'll get into what drives that exactly. Some of that is duplication and moving funds around. So as I go through the next few slides, we're going to talk about what it looks like with that, all the transfers removed between the funds. So you can see a better picture of exactly what those numbers went up and down.
Thank you.
Absolutely. The focuses this year, again, are the same focuses we had last year. Infrastructure improvements, both capital improvement program is in those funds is a $12.8 million budget that's presented to you this year. There includes $4.2 million for street improvements. 1.5 of that is for local street improvements. There's $1 million for the Cleveland project to do some pre-work on utilities and right-of-way acquisition to continue that from 4-laning or from the railroad to Willow. There's the ADM truck lane, which was part of the ADM TIF that was just passed a few months ago. There's an airport entryway road, which it goes along with those upgrades that we're doing out at the airport with the terminal. They would like to get that road redone as part of that. And then there's another $1 million to do the mill and overlay on Broadway, continue that from Washington to Van Buren. The colleague program included in this budget, there's $10.7 million, all debt-related. 8.7 of that comes from sales tax, and $2 million of it is from utility revenues that are set aside for that. And then we have public safety support. Again, this is the highest funding year for transfers to support their operations for police and fire. We increased the amount of funding going to them by $1.57 million this year. This is what the budget looks like without those transfers taken in. So we take that $154 million in revenue down to $95 million. When we take out all the transfers of sales tax coming into general fund, going out to EMA, money going from EMA out to all the capital improvement funds to do those projects and so on. Of that $95 million, there is $97 million in expenditures going out. Personnel services is almost $33 million of that. That is 34% of the overall budget. Operations are a little over 30, which is 31%. Capital outlays at 15%, 14.6 million, and debt services is 19, a little over 19, which is 20% of the budget. Overall, you can see we have a budget deficit of almost $1.5 million. So naturally, the question would be how do we fund a deficit budget? So on the next page, these are all of the funds that are in the city that do not have a balanced budget presented to you this year. There's just a handful. There are specific reasons on many of them. Special Projects Fund, we budget to bring in special revenues there that have to do with federal and state seizure monies for fire and police. We always budget to spend more. There's a little of more than a $2 million fund balance in this fund, and they budget to spend about $200,000 every year, even though they may only bring in 60. So there's funds sitting there and available. They have the appropriations if they need to purchase vehicles or some type of equipment for their special projects. Health Fund, this year we are not proposing any changes to the health plan, and with those projected increases in trends across health funding everywhere, it's going to lead to a $112,000 deficit in the health fund. And again, they do have a fund balance to be able to draw that down from. Airport fund specifically has a surplus in their budget due to the Oklahoma Military Strategic Planning Grant that Cooper talked to you about earlier this week that's going to be dedicated toward the terminal, so we needed to make sure that that didn't get spent again and that those funds were available to appropriate as part of the terminal airport project, which is not budgeted currently as we're waiting for what those are going to come in at next week. Economic Development Authority, you see a huge deficit there, 1.367. It's all a timing issue. We are anticipating getting the final disbursement from the county for the advanced foods TIF in June of this year. And so it will roll into fund balance, and the final bond payment will be due out on July 1. So it's just a timing. The funds will be there before the end of the year to be able to support that deficit. Advanced Development Authority, we have a small surplus there. It's the same exact budget that we've done year after year. A lot of that comes because the scholarship program is not always fully utilized, and so there's funds to draw that down. Stormwater, it's a pretty big surplus budget this year. Last year it was just the opposite. There was a huge deficit budget, but we just awarded almost $1 million in work this week for stormwater, so there'll be sufficient work going on still in stormwater, even with this the surplus budget for next year. Capital project escrow fund. This is money coming in from developers for basins. Depending on what projects get done in stormwater, that goes over to help fund those projects. They again also have a fund balance in that fund. Police, 911, and fire continue operating deficits. We've made significant improvement in those funds as far as their funding. 911 continues to be a struggle. There's been some reorganization across the state as far as how those centers are funded, and that we'll continue to look at that to come up with a solution of what that needs to be long-term. Police, last year, their budget deficit was $1.1 million. We've made a significant increase or improvement there, so we're down to less than $200,000. I anticipate that they would actually finish the year with a surplus based on trends of what they actually spend compared to their budget the last few years. And fires really has a large deficit because they have in the budget for this year to buy a pumper truck, which is $700,000. So it won't be a continuing thing to see that big of capital spent on fire every single year, just as they come up.
Don't they have money in their account that has not been spent?
Yes, they do. All right, so when we look at these numbers for revenues and all these categories and look at it compared to the current year budget that we're in, you can see the variance. We have a $5.5 million true increase in revenues without transfers. Personnel services is up $663,000, operations 1.8, capital outlays down $52,000, debt services up $2 million, which we improved the overall position $1.1 million compared to last year's budget. When we look at that, personnel services decreased 1% compared to last year of the total budget. Operations stayed the same. Capital outlay decreased 1%, and debt services went up 2%. And we'll continue to see that trend as we're preparing to have the level of payments it's going to take to finance Call Lake moving forward. When we look at the revenues and break that down as to what are the big variables that are causing increases in that revenue, you can see $4.94 million of it is coming from the municipal authority. At this time, we have increased water revenue by $4.75 million. I know it seems like a really big number. We're very conservative in this year's budget at $13.7 million. We're coming in closer to probably $19 million by the end of the year.
What did we budget this year for water sales to Coke?
400,000 gallons a day.
Okay.
And so that is really where we're coming in. In these projections, we've used the new rate increases, which went from $5.82 to $7.01 this year per thousand. And next January, they are set to go up to $5 755 per thousand, and a 2% increase after that. So those numbers are factored in.
And then what's the budgeted gallons per day sale to Coke in this budget?
Is 1.5.
Okay. Is that what
And
the
so
actual
we're still being
average was?
conservative,
Sure. What was the actual average over the last fiscal year?
3.1.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. And so we just want to make sure that we have
Sure.
room and that we're not overshooting that and having to come back later and cut things out of the budget. So
Aaron, how much of that is potable water and how much is gray water
that is all potable. That's what we're talking about here. Potable water.
to Coke?
Yes.
Yeah. We don't have any budget number because they don't pay us for any of it. They don't pay us for gray water.
That's correct.
All right.
Thank you.
The other slight increases in EMA is $50,000 for stormwater. We've seen a trend up in that. It's matching what we've come in the last couple of years, so we're comfortable with raising that $50,000. Same with trash services. We've done some slight increases in dumpster rates. I think 5% last year, and we were doing 5% again this year to get a little closer to what other competitors in the market are charging. And then we did a slight increase also in interest as we have more funds in that, or more cash in the EMA fund. There's more interest that's coming in. So those are all impacting EMA. EEDA, it's all TIF related. We have are receiving our last funds from the Advanced Foods TIF this year, but we added the TP&L TIF for the first time, and so that nets to be about $1 million increase. We put in $2 million TP&L. The county was very unsure of what that might come in, so we wanted to make it high enough that no matter how much they have laying out there when they're valued at the end of the year, that we have the appropriations we need to pass through those funds. Whatever we receive is what we'll pay out. So just want to make sure it's sufficient. Capital Improvement Fund, the revenue is going down there. That is almost all related to the 66th Street project with ODOT. There's a $1.2 million match from ODOT on that project that we won't be receiving again. The next line is only $310,000, but I wanted to explain to you because it's a new thing for the budget this year. I know that you're familiar with the capital recovery ordinance that we have. We've never budgeted dollars for that in the past. So if we receive in funds from somebody to pass it through, we don't have appropriations. We have to take it out of something else. And so we wanted to specifically put in revenue and expense to be able to pass that through without coming to do an appropriation for that. And so in each of the 4 areas for stormwater, sewer, water, and transportation, you'll see money budgeted in there for those. And then the remaining funds make up $500,000, and we'll get to those as we get to each of those funds. Start going through the expense pieces of it. Personnel overall was up $663,000, which is 2% increase over what it was this year. Looking at staffing levels, you can see we're projecting in this budget to have 10-person increase, with only 3 of those being full-time and the other 7 being part-time and seasonal. The 3 full-time positions that are added to this budget are the assistant city manager position, a safety coordinator position, and an administrative assistant for the Public Works Division. Previously, that position had been shared with Public Works and Public Utilities, so we added it so they each have their own administrative assistant now. Other than that, the part-time seasonals is we added some gym attendants and ball field maintenance and lifeguards for Parks and Recreation Department. We added a part-time accountant. ETN got rid of a part-time production assistant. And there's 2 part-time drivers added to the transit. So we move on to operations. We have here a $1.8 million increase. EMA has a decrease of almost $900,000. All of that is attributable to the school bond sales tax. And so as we don't have to pay out the excess collected there to the school districts, that reduces that expenditure in that line. Enid Economic Development Authority, again, here there's 2 things that are driving that operation cost up, and that is the payout of the TP&L TIF, and there's also a parking lot guarantee with a new developer for the hotel downtown that we would have to pay out when that parking lot is finished, according to that agreement.
Is all that due next year?
We anticipate that, yes, it's due within 30 days of the completion of the parking lot. The payment is.
Folks that receive part-time employment,
Do they also receive medical benefits or anything?
No, our part-timers do not receive medical benefits. Here are the capital recovery expenditures that I just mentioned that match those revenues on the previous slide, and then all the remaining funds, you can see we have an increase of $262,000. So we talked about capital outlay. You'll see all of these are the capital improvement plan funds, which we'll hear all about on Monday. But it's really just depending on what projects get the priority. And so as we go through and talk about each of those, you'll see some of the reasons why those went up and down based on priorities. The remaining funds of $388,000 are really driven by two things: the pumper truck for the fire department, and then some decrease in public works equipment that we were able to fund and buy now for some street equipment that they really needed to get some moving, get some stuff moving this summer on that. So,
Aaron, you've mentioned this fire truck a couple of times. Is this truck, has it been ordered, I assume?
no, this is, they're requesting it in next year's budget, and so we've included that in here. It hasn't been
And
ordered.
how long do they think it'll take for that to be received? Those, I think, usually take a long time to show up, don't they?
They do, but we have to have the funds available to order it. To place the order, we have to have appropriations, and we have to be able to hold a PO to have an encumbrance before they can ever start building it. But yes, it will take several months once it's ordered. That's the same with most of our other heavy-duty equipment as well.
I would, before we finish this, we're out of this process, I'd like to have some idea of how much they're going to spend on that and when they expect that equipment to be received.
Absolutely. I'll let Joe know. He is speaking next Thursday when we go over the fire fund, and I'm sure the amount that's in here for the placeholder, $700,000 for that pumper truck, and I'm sure he can give you more details on that at that time.
Does it replace an existing one, or will that be an addition?
No, we'll replace an existing one. All right. The last area is debt service, and you can see we have an increase in Enid Municipal Authority of $2 million. That is the placeholder for future CAW, as we need to pull out some of those additional revenues. As we increase revenues, we need to set that aside to make future CAW payments. That's that increase. And Economic Development Authority is $7,300 different, and that's based on interest on the 3 notes that are outstanding there.
Aaron, go back one slide, please. The stormwater variance of $1.7 million.
Yes,
Is that a carryover from the year before?
Last year, or the current year we're in, we budgeted 2.7. There was a lot of bigger projects in there, and you guys just awarded almost $1 million worth of construction at this week's meeting. So they will be starting that in the next few weeks, and that will take several months for them to finish. And so there's work in progress. It's a matter of timing when it comes to stormwater.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Now we're going to get into some of the individual funds and what makes up those numbers in more detail. Tonight, we're going to go over the funds up here that are in yellow, which is General Fund, Health, Golf, CDBG Sinking Fund, VDA, and then we're going to move on down the agenda to EMA and wrap up with EPTA for tonight. Monday, we'll come back and do all the ones in green, which are the capital improvement program. You'll hear from engineering on that. And then next Thursday, we'll wrap up with the remaining funds, airport, the 3 police funds, fire, the event center fund, and wrap up with EEDA next Thursday.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, so general fund tonight, talking about, this is current year. This is not the budget that you're looking at, but for you to understand where we're coming in this year and where we're basing some of our stuff for next year on. And you see we're coming in only $5,000 off of our projection of where we budgeted this year. So I feel pretty good about that. That it was pretty right on. There's a couple things I do want to point out. Sales tax is coming in a little higher. We will bring back an appropriation in June, because there will be transfers that need to happen from that to the municipal authority, and we don't have enough appropriations right now to make that transfer. So we will come with an appropriation for sales tax in June to address that. Franchise fees coming in a little high. That's timing. Last year came in a little low. We just got one of our payments late, so we don't anticipate that to continue into the new year. Police fines, they they have been trending up slightly in the past few years. And then the only other big thing on there is grants. That all has to do with the J-Luce grant, and just, we're unsure at this point when the timing of when those funds will actually come in. I know we're working it and have submitted paperwork to get reimbursed on that. So we may get some of that this year. We are just not certain at this point.
Out of curiosity, what is the revenue on mowing and cleaning?
Mowing and cleaning. So whenever code enforcement puts liens on people because we have to go out and clean up their property because they did not do it, that's the revenue that we get in once we've incurred expenses to pay people to go do that.
Is it cash revenue?
Yes.
Okay.
It's reimbursing us for expense that we really incurred to send somebody out there to mow.
On the pool and concessions one, so so the projection, was that made like on the year before? Was that kind of made off of?
Yeah, based off of history.
So we did $13,000 more this year than we
Let-
thought.
Less. Yeah, we projected to have 40, we're coming in at 27, so we're 13,000 under.
Gotcha. I'm looking backwards.
Any more questions on this slide? Okay. The next one does show the next year's proposed budget to the current year budget, so you can see where the variances are. We did include a 1.3% increase in sales tax for next year's budget. We felt, looking historically at longer and shorter term returns on that was being on the conservative side, and we will meet that going forward. I do believe that's probably close to where we'll finish this year as far as a variance. Franchise fees, there was a slight increase there. Miscellaneous interest, and then we have a decrease in grant funding. That's two things. It's the removal of the J-Luce grant that's already been spent, but also we anticipate that we will get a library state aid grant for $31,000, so they net together for a decrease of $171,000. So overall, $300,000 increase in revenue for general fund this year.
Aaron, do you know whether or not we have any other grants pending?
I know that we've applied for some other grants. I know that there's a Trailhead grant. I know that we've just done the stuff with the Thunder Cares Foundation. That ribbon cutting should be coming soon with Dawn Haskins. Stephanie may be able to better answer what grants we've actually applied for at this point.
Yeah, those are basically in some, the state across the school, and then we also have the Cleveland, I don't know if Cheryl's gonna, I haven't heard, maybe Robert can answer that question there. It was the trail and the boulevard, so I don't know if Cheryl's still included in that.
And who was that grant from?
That is part.
Yes, the Cleveland Street Improvement Project, the grants were for the project, were for the roadway project. They did not provide the grant for the trail. We paid our payment to, paid our payment. It did not include the grant for the trail.
But we're anticipating one.
No, not for that project, not for the Cleveland Street project. No,
Well, but I thought part of what we were paying for with, but, okay, back me up a step, because I thought that was already built into that project.
we are building it. It's built into the project construction, and was built into the project. But if you may recall, there was $1 million for the road, about $600,000 for the trail. And when we made our final payment, they took that 600. They didn't buy that $600,000 on the ground. They took it back. They took it out.
When did that happen? Sorry, did I miss that?
I'm not sure, well, it happened before we've awarded the work, and so the money, the project, we have part of the project already approved.
Yeah.
It
So the money
happened
would have been
in-
made up with our share to ODOT if they took it back.
Yeah, that was in, and those decisions were in June, July of 17.
Okay.
We were making those payments to ODOT.
But
May
to-
not recall, but that's when that was presented.
I was going to say, that's a great topic to discuss with the ODOT director who will be in town tomorrow, 10 o'clock, so I'll make sure I follow up with him on. We'll be following up with the other road projects too that we will need funding on in the future.
Aaron, what was the revenue on the water side and stormwater? Was it 50 million?
Water revenue that we have budgeted for next year is 18.5 million, water revenue.
The other revenue besides what's up there, isn't it about $45 million?
The total revenue in EMA is 53 million.
53?
Yeah, but that includes sales tax, which is also in here.
You're talking about $95 million
Yes,
in actual revenue?
yes,
Not the
right,
funny accounting that goes on between the two?
right. With removing the transfers, it's 95. Yeah,
Thank you.
yes, absolutely. So those are the revenues from general fund. Do we have any more questions on the revenues for general fund? Okay, move on to expenses for general fund. And these are the categories. We have personnel, operations, and capital outlay. You can see that we have an increase of $299,000 for personnel, which is a 3% increase there. Operations, we have a slight decrease, $23,000, mainly due to the removal of the J-Luce grant, which is a little over $200,000. And then just slight increases across the other departments. A lot of that has to do with software cost increasing. That seemed to be kind of a universal thing that came in from many different areas this year, is that their software companies were upping fees pretty heftily this year. And then capital outlay, you can see we have an increase of 1.527 million, and what makes up capital outlay is transfers out to other funds, sales tax transfers, and general fund equipment. And we have a slide on each of those to talk about what's driving that $1.5 million number. This kind of breaks down that capital outlay here. So operations, the first two, personnel and operations combined, is that 275 variance. General fund transfers are up 1.566. Almost all of that is to police and fire. As I presented earlier, $1.57 million increase to police and fire funding this year to make sure they have what they need for operations. Transfer is up $193,000. That accounts for that 1.33% increase that we budgeted for in revenue. And then capital replacement here, even though it is a decrease of $233,000, I just want to assure you they're getting at least one piece of equipment that we plan to bring to you in June, hopefully for $200,000 to help them. They've been able to get a couple of other things, a steel roller and a trailer and a couple other smaller pieces of equipment that they needed, that they requested for next year's budget. We were able to get this year within appropriation so that they were taken care of there. So they're not being shortchanged. These are all of the departments that make up general fund. I don't plan to go through each and every single one of them. If there's specific ones you'd like to talk about, I would be more than glad to address any of those variances from year over year. Administration starts on page 23 and libraries on 74, and all the pages in between are all the departments that make up general fund. I can go through the ones that have bigger variances and let you know why those are, or if you have specific questions, I'm glad to address those.
I do have a question here on the table on page 21, a couple of things. The local program funding, we showed quite a significant decrease in that one, and what all does that entail?
Okay, local program funding, the reason why you see a large decrease there is in the past, the Public Art Commission money was included in that line, and this year for the first time, we broke that out into a separate line. It's the line right under it, this public art programming. So the $75,000 decrease you see there is all from that public art funding, and it's included in the line below for $80,000 this year based on the calculation of the capital projects that are in there right now.
And that's how we came up with that $80,250,
That's based on the 1% of the capital projects that are in the budget draft as it sits today, yes.
Yeah, if you'll turn to page 39, are you on? 39 shows a breakout too of what makes up the 1150 and then the line below it, which is the public arts funding line.
Yeah, I did have a question too on page 39. What's this item Skeleton Creek? What is that? That doesn't mean anything to me.
Robert, would you like to address that? The Skeleton Creek with COPE that is a pass-through, we receive revenue and pay it out?
Yes, that is an agreement we have with the USGS. They do stream monitoring downstream on Skeleton Creek. They provide that data. They only will contract with local governments. It is a pass-through cost. We have an agreement with Coke Nitrogen. They pay us the cost for our local costs, and then we make payments to USGS. And we receive their stream data information.
Is this something, is this an expense we have every year?
Yes, every year.
At the same amount?
Yes, it goes up over time, but I think for the last couple of years, it's been the same.
It's always on Skeleton Creek, huh?
Yeah, they have a flow monitor on Skeleton Creek.
Huh.
USGS will only maintain if the local government will assist with the cost. They cover part of the cost, we cover a substantial part of the cost. Ours is pass-through.
And the Arts Commission amount, refresh my memory, I understand the 1% part, but is that added to the cost of the project, or is that just something the city pays?
That's all they get. They get that budget, and then the project is paid for.
I understand that part of it, but I'm asking how we come up with that particular amount.
So I take all of the estimates that are in the funds for CIP, and if they meet those thresholds, they're over $250,000 or they're under 10 million, and we take all of those and add them up and then multiply it times 1% to get the amount that needs to go into this fund for capital.
This is an estimate then.
Yes, it's based off of the budgeted dollars.
Okay.
Per the ordinance.
Yes, per the ordinance.
You done?
No?
Okay, go.
No, I was just trying to, cogitating there, but the 1% then, my understanding was that was going to be added to the project, to the cost of the project. Is that not correct?
No.
Aaron, what's your answer?
No, it is not. It's done based on the budget allocation for the ordinance, and then the commission has that amount for the year to work with if it is budgeted and approved by the city council.
Was this the account that was $75,000 last year?
Yes. In the current
now
year,
eight-
that's the amount.
It's now 80,000.
Yes.
Okay.
And it rolls over what we don't spend, we still get to keep. We don't have to give it up every year.
So this is just city money?
Yes.
Okay.
And then if a public, or if a private person wants to pay for something, then private people have the opportunity to pay for things too. That's not all paid for with city money. Not every instance is.
I don't know why, when we were discussing this whole process, I was under the impression that we were going to actually add this expense to the cost of the projects. In other words, that it wasn't just going to be public funds. It was going to be money that the people creating the construction projects.
That is one of the, well, I don't know what you mean by that.
But, well, Ron, this is based on city money. It's not, the ordinance was never set up to be based on what everybody else in town was spending. So how could we pass it on?
I understand that.
But then how could we pass it on to anybody else?
We're limiting it to city projects. But what
Yeah.
I'm saying is, if we've got a $100,000 project, and then we'd add 1% to that when we bid that project to include the arts money.
That's,
You mean when we bid the project out?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that it should be included in, it should be, I mean, the way I understand it, it should be included whenever you bid a project, that
That's the understanding I had
1%
too.
of whatever, 1% of whatever the project is gonna go into the art fund.
well, what I thought the ordinance was set up to do, and what it looks to me like it is doing, is that we take our estimate of what we're gonna spend, that generates a budget number that's all totally discretionary to the city commission, but that the number wasn't each project was going to have X dollars of art spent on it. It was, we're going to start building up the public art in the community by taking that small percentage of what we spend and throwing it into a fund that we could then use to fund projects that may be on the same site, but may not.
I know it's not related to, specifically to the project.
Either way, and a lot of other communities do it the way Ron's talking about, they include it as a line in the bid process. And when I asked about that, it was a big cluster and was like, no, we're not doing it that way. So this is the way they do it.
Well, I think
This isn't the way that the ordinance really lined it out to be done. This is the way that the finance department decided.
I thought this is the way the ordinance, allowed for it, but I think part of the reason that it was done this way is that a lot of what we spend money on is, streets and that kind of improvement that, We don't want a statue in the corner of Randolph and Fourth because we're doing a box culvert there. We want to be able to kick a little bit of money to more concentrate the public art improvement where it can be best appreciated. Like the mural on the railroad at Meadow Lake Tunnel and the other stuff that the public art.
Don't have to go with the project, but 1% of the project goes for a piece, or goes towards art somewhere.
Well, actually, what the ordinance requires is you all to consider
Yeah.
giving 1%. It doesn't require you to do it, but it requires you to at least talk about doing it and vote yes or no.
This is what I've been fighting about for 4 years, because it says may instead of shall, and it should say shall, because that's what every other.
I do want to jump in and say the number that Aaron calculated is based on 1%. So that is the 1% number, and that will stay that number unless you guys vote to change it.
Sure.
Now, we have the ability to spend up to that 1%, but we don't have to go all the way to that 1%, correct?
Well, yes,
I'm not
yes.
insinuating.
We don't have to spend anything.
Yeah.
How that works is
Or we can spend more. I mean, it's just the baseline number for the budget discussion.
projects go to the Public Arts Commission of Enid, PACE Committee. They have been meeting monthly. They've been talking about several projects. When they have a project that they approve, it is supposed to, and it will come to the City Commission. And there's a commissioner representing that. Commissioner Wilson is on that committee. There has been at least 2 projects approved already. There's several being considered. And so the main reason, just so everybody knows, that it was looked at to include it with the projects when they go out for bid, but the main reason is practicality and keeping the cost down. If, for instance, we bid a road project that is, like Aaron said, between $250 and $10 million, and we have Cummins do Willow Road, for instance, I don't think we want Cummins is a wonderful contractor, but they're not into art and artists, and so they could find subcontractors to do that, but they will charge a fee for that. So the reason it was determined, the lady that came from the state, I can't think of her name now, but she used to be with the State Art Commission, did suggest it could be either way, and we think this way will work best. If it doesn't, you can always change it. You can change it.
It's the easiest way to do it right now.
Is there a cap on the amount that we can,
Yes.
I don't remember what that.
There's a cap on what, like we can't, so for instance, the Call Lake project is a capital improvement project, it's not part of this. So when we had this discussion, we decided to cap it, anything over 10 million, we don't get part of it. So yes, there is a cap.
I
10 million is the
I
cap.
knew that there was a cap, but I didn't
Yeah,
remember
it's
the
between,
10.
anything between 250,000 and 10 million, right?
Yes.
But just to further clarify one more time, Commissioner Waddell, for your question, and to follow up on what Commissioner Wilson said, I don't know how much has been spent out of the 75, I think roughly about half, but at almost every meeting, if not every meeting, somebody will report that to the PACE Committee so they know. So the money may not be spent, but per the ordinance, it's supposed to roll over and stay in an account. And that's the way we set up the process to do. So while it may not be, anything may not be spent that year, the funds stay in an account so that they could be used or appropriated in a future year.
Saving for a bigger project and
Yeah,
they
but
need
some
to,
projects are really expensive.
Those bronze statues are crazy.
Proceed.
Well, let me,
Further questions on governmental funds?
on general fund, talk to
Yeah.
me about ETN and public relations. You said that they lost a position, but the budget's gone up.
Right, so there are a couple of big expenses in there this year. One is a $15,000 expense, I believe, to redo the City of Enid website. And then there's $5,000 in there for app development to work on some apps for the city as well. And so those are some one-time expenditures that are in this year for ETN. Other questions on individual departmental budgets?
And if a question comes up later, we
Abs-
can certainly come back to it, and we've got 3 meetings planned, and we can plan as many as we need
Please
to
no.
have, so. So this will not be your last chance to ask a question about the general fund or. any-
6 hours is plenty.
While we're talking about that, though, just one other item on here is the ROGO contract, which I've brought up every year, and I don't want this year to be any different. I would like Mr. Rogo, to be able to tell us, what he's accomplished for us this year. I see the monthly reports where he tells us what's going on in the legislature, which is usually not much. But we're paying him to
This year more than
accomplish something for the city of Enid, and I'd just like to have something a little more specific than that from him, so.
I will certainly ask him to come in. In fact, we have him come in, may not be frequently enough, but he'll be glad to come in. He's got as you'll remember, we had a legislative forum session, I think it was in February. I believe we have another one coming up scheduled this month. So that'll be a good opportunity for not only him, but for the legislators to talk to you about what happened or what didn't happen, what needs to happen. And then certainly we can have him come as often as you want to talk about what he's doing.
Well, this is similar to the contract that we discussed, for our retail consultant. And to me, we're paying these people a lot of money. They get a check every month, whether they accomplish anything or not. And I would just like to have them give us a specific indication of what they've accomplished for us in the last 12 months. I know at some time in the past, he's probably done something, and I don't doubt that he goes and hangs around down there at the legislature and talks to people every week. But is Enid, Oklahoma getting $48,000 worth of benefit?
We're getting a benefit, and I think that I guess I would say yes. And I would say the reason I would say yes is because, especially when the legislature is in session, he's down there all the time. We don't have anybody else down there all the time. I guess we have our representatives. But I'll give you an example of today.
Kinda.
Yes. Today, in fact, I may have forwarded it to you guys too. There was an action alert that came out from OML about a bill that might impact us. It was basically talking about bypasses around communities or truck routes that we've talked about before, and it would require a study to be done by ODOT and presented to the municipal governing body. That's probably good for us. So, although OML is also down there supporting that, I can take those action alerts and quickly send those to Kurt and ask him to make the rounds and do what he can to make sure that goes as well. He works in concert with Mike Fina, who's the OML director, and trying to do things for us. There's been several things that have come up. There's a trash bag ordinance. I don't think it passed, so.
It was killed.
It was killed. I don't know that Kurt can take all the credit or any of the credit, but I do know that I asked him to do what he could, which means talking to Senator Peterson and other folks up there. He does have a lot of experience. And so I can probably ask him to come in before the budget meeting sessions are over and just talk to you.
Well, if he's got something specific, but like I say, I don't need another update on what's going on at the Capitol, because I got a pretty good idea what that is or isn't.
So we looked at Ricky Hayes' contract. I couldn't hurt us to look at Kurt Rogo's contract.
Yeah, and I'll say on that note, Kurt's contract is up June 30th, and we can certainly look at it. Kurt's always been amenable. He wants to provide value and add value. So if there's something, I hear what you're saying, if there's something more that we can have him do for us, I'm sure he would be glad to do.
Well, he's heard from me the last 4 or 5 years, I know.
Well, and likewise, just for the sake of tradition, we spent $200-some-odd thousand on OML while I've been here. I still don't know anything we've got from them. I see those emails. I know that you serve on the governing board. I don't think OML is particularly effective at furthering the city of Enid's interests. I think they're far more interested in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. And I've never seen anybody from OML here. At least Kurt comes and talks to us. And aside from those emails, which I don't see a whole lot of value in, I'm still unconvinced that we're getting our money's worth from OML. Not that I've ever got a lot of ground headway with that, but I think we're throwing away $35,000 every year on a glorified email blast.
Well, the one thing
You're not going to save $35,000. You still have to educate the municipalities.
What do you mean, Bill?
Well, you're not going to, if you do away with the OML, who are you going to turn to?
Well, I don't think they're doing anything for us now. I think we would just have $35,000 spent on something else, and OML would keep going along their merry way, funded by somebody else.
They are lobbying for municipalities every day that they're in session, that the legislature's in session, and throughout the year. Things aren't very smooth with legislators. They keep up with it, and they have 3 people that work on it.
I'm just not sure we should be paying this much of that.
What do you think we should pay?
I would be happy to leave OML and let them, I frankly think that it's one of those situations where they will keep doing what they do whether we are participating or not. And I'm not sure what they're doing is giving us any great value.
That's your opinion, I just don't agree.
Sure.
I will say, I'll just jump in. Clearly, I see OML as a great resource for the city.
How? Tell me how. In 5 years, I've never
Julia,
seen anybody show me how.
Can you pull up the OML website? Because that will certainly help me, but several things. One is they have expertise in certain areas, not only legal counsel, but in...
We've got our own legal, we pay a lot of money for legal counsel.
We certainly do. They also offer training. In fact, they offer training for new commissioners.
Yeah, but we have to
that
pay
I
for
don't
that
think-
separately, Gerald. That's not part of this. We pay for that as a separate line item.
We do get a discount, though, as members. So,
I guarantee it's not $35,000.
if you pull up the member services, that'll be helpful to see what we get. They obviously that comes with that are watching the impact on municipalities. Certainly, FENA come in here and visit with you sometime soon too.
I've asked a couple
I
times.
think they'd be glad to do it.
I would like to see us vote separately on both of these items when the time comes.
I would say there's
Okay.
a lot of stuff that we've gotten emails from OML about that has prompted me to email our legislators about that I might not have otherwise. Because then that way they're doing the work. So, I mean, we get those emails and a lot of times if I look at it, I think it's something that I think would impact Enid or other municipalities for that matter. I've gone by their advice quite a few times.
There are 475 cities that are members of OML.
Are all of them paying $35,000?
It's
to
all
OML?
based on a formula.
Sure.
And
Based on
Oklahoma
size.
City probably pays at $1.25 million. Oakland pays a little less than Oklahoma City. It's all based on a formula.
Sure. But I guess
Would you do
the
away
point I'm
with-
making is that because we are a relatively small piece of that, because they're going to do what they do, whether we're participating or not, but that $35,000 doesn't, I don't,
Ultimately,
I
they
don't feel
won't
like
do
we're getting
what
our
they
value
do if there's not enough communities supporting them.
Well, if we don't have them and we don't have Kurt, then.
I'm happy to have
that's
one
a-
of them.
I mean, we gotta have one or the other, I feel like, because I feel like that's a lot of legwork.
Well, I think
being
that's
done between the two of
the
them.
kind of the point that he's making is that we've got two entities that are that apparently are working to the same end. But I guess my question would be is that between the two of them, you know, if we're paying, what product are we receiving that of value that we can show that it's worth it? And I don't know if OML has produced anything specifically for the city of Enid, or if Kurt has produced anything specifically for the city of Enid. And so if they're working for Oklahoma as a whole and Oklahoma municipalities as a whole, we don't stand to lose anything by just picking one.
Well, but Kurt at least answers to us. I mean, Kurt shows up and talks to us, and Kurt is specifically there for the city of Enid's benefit. And I don't feel like our interest in Oklahoma City or Tulsa are always aligned, nor is Enid and Alva or Fairview always aligned. You know, we're not a major metropolitan, we're not a suburb, and we're not a small town. We're that weird little, there are like 4 of us in Oklahoma that fit that weird little niche.
We are the 8th largest city in the state of Oklahoma.
But we're a micropolitan area separate and distinct from a larger metropolitan. We're
There are 4 cities,
Yeah, go
4
ahead.
cities in Oklahoma that have more than 100,000 people. Norman and Broken Arrow just went into that. Have you ever been down to the legislature and see what happens?
yeah.
When?
I didn't make it up this session. I made it down last.
I would say
haven't-
that
I haven't seen-
OML over the years, it's not every year, but occasionally they have done great service for Enid. It has been a while, but they, for instance, they helped us when we were doing the economic development and the Phillips University case. They filed briefs for us, amicus curiae briefs, and worked with us, and we would not have been able to get all of our arguments in. And I believe they did that on something in around 2000. So they have periodically provided us with some significant legal help. But it isn't every year. It's just good to have them there if we need to. We were having some problems with elections, and I worked out the problems with the elections with the local election board, but then OML worked out a solution statewide for the elections that allow us to not have as many difficulties with the election board. It involves absentee voters. But on things like that, every once in a while, maybe every third year, there's something that they are of critical help to us. And it's not something not that he's bad, but it's not something that Kurt could do. But that's just the legal part. I've used them before, and they have been of service. Now, would they help even if we weren't a member? They would probably still take my call.
They do other things too. I mean, they do a lot of educational things throughout the year. They have different workshops and things that, to me, as a community leader, I found beneficial because I like to go and talk with other communities and see how they're handling things. I've spoken at least 2 of them about things that we were doing, and I've had other communities come and ask me questions about how are we handling things because they're having problems and they saw that we were doing the same thing. And so that's been beneficial to me as a person on the city council because I've participated in that process several times.
Well, and I have no doubt that they would give us an explanation of what they were doing for Enid. And that's really the only thing that I'm interested in. The only reason I brought this up is that
Tradition.
any other city employee that we had, we were paying $48,000 a year. We would ask them occasionally what they were doing for us. I'm sure that subject would come up. And I just want to know, I just want them to tell us what these people are doing specifically for the city of Enid. We're paying them. We ought to find out what they're doing for us. And
I happen to be the president of the OML.
I understand
They will
that.
be in Enid with their board meeting in June. You're welcome to come.
Okay.
You need to be there to see what happens and not just guess about what happens.
Well, I mean, I've been doing this.
All of you are invited.
I have been doing
I
this
am
for
the
5 years.
president.
It's
Come to the meeting, see what happens. And we're gonna spend a lot of money if we go out on our own and try to develop the education and the lobby effort.
We would not be able to, could we pay them just for classes? Yeah, I suppose we could.
But we do
if we're a
already.
member.
We can't pay an
do, but
attorney
we do get
$35,000.
You do get a discount. What Kurt Rogo does is focus specifically on legislative actions. OML does more than that. Kurt would, if he was standing here, would tell you he's not looking, and nor could he duplicate what they do for us. But we will certainly get some more information and bring it back to you. I think, to me, I think it'd be a step backwards not to be a member of OML, but I understand some of you feel strongly either way. So,
We are a big city and we need to act like one.
plus, it's a tradition at these.
I'm not trying to do an OML. I just think we got duplicative efforts.
Well, flip a coin.
Well, I mean, I think to a degree there probably is a little bit of duplication because part of what OML does is the legislative stuff, but that's not all that they do. If that's all they did, I would totally agree we didn't need both. But they do a lot more than that's just one little bit of what they do. They do a lot of other things on top of that Kurt can't do.
You've got to watch out what the legislature does because there's a lot of education that comes with what they enact. And all we have to do is set up another department to do that, and we're not going to do it for $35,000.
We do benefit from the research department too. That's another thing, that salary studies, utility rate studies, labor bulletins. Those are things that no other organization that I'm aware of is set up to do. Could we do them? Maybe. It would take a lot of time. There's training. I get it. I'm going to come back with some more information. It sounds like we're going to vote on this item and on Kurt Rogo at this point, or sometime before we're done.
I say there was a lot of good things fired out about OML, and you know, if it wasn't that either one of them was bad, it was a duplication of efforts. And so it was a lot of heavy information on OML. Still haven't heard what it is that Kurt provides that we wouldn't get from OML.
I'll tell you one other thing that just, as I look at their website, that we are taking advantage of more often is the new grants program that they have. Stephanie is using it now. I think there's some grants we've already applied for using that. That is a tool that I think will be beneficial to us in the future. In fact, we saved $15,000 in this budget. Whatever we were paying for the other grant software, eCivis, we dropped because their grants, whatever their program was called, was $50, and we thought it was better. So that right there probably pays for about half of it. If we get one grant, that would pay for it all. So I'm probably going to get a list of what Stephanie's applied for and bring it back. It's right along the lines of what you've talked about before, Commissioner Jansen, and it helps us to have a tool that where somebody gathers all of those type things together in one place so we can search through, and we may even highlight that for you at a future meeting to show the value.
You're on.
All right. Any other departments that we would like to talk about other than general government and the general fund?
I don't hear any.
Not today.
Okay,
I don't hear any. Go ahead.
all right.
Now, we're,
Too late.
you're going to go ahead and we're going to have some information about the golf operation, right?
Of course
Yeah.
we are.
Yes, we're not to there yet, but yes.
Okay.
I'm not even finished with general fund.
I just,
So this is just operations for general fund. They're still where all the big dollars are in general fund, which is transfer, sales tax, and capital equipment. So general fund, going back to transfers, you can see here current year projections for proposed transfers out versus the budget last year. And the difference there is the 1.566, with the majority of that police and fire, $1.57 million increase. There's an increase also to golf of 142, and we'll get to golf tonight and talk about some of the reasons why that is. And then we have decreases in 3 other areas of transit. Juvenile services is only a decrease because it's now, that was CIC fund, which was done away with last year. And so that number for that transfer is just rolled up into the police because the police is carrying the cost for the operations of that effort. And then EEDA is based on contract incentives. And so there was a decrease. We paid out one to Academy this last year that will not be in next year's budget. So that decreased $93,000. We talked about sales tax transfers. You can see the only change is moving that $0.25 that was going to the school districts. It moves into call this year, so there's a complete reduction of the school sales tax for $2 million, and then overall $193,000 increase, which is the 1% increase in revenue, passes through to the expense side as well.
So we got more, we brought in more in sales tax this year than last year.
Yes.
Can you say that louder for me?
Yes, we're up a little over 1%, about 1.5% so far this year on sales tax from where we were budgeted to come in. Equipment, this is found on page 80 of your budget book. $667,000 worth of equipment that is budgeted. We have email upgrades that was in this year's budget. It is a repeat item. It came up and we needed to do some servers this year instead, so we did those and delayed this a year. So it's still there. We still need to do it. It's still critical. Time clock upgrades. A lot of the time clocks that we have are now, I don't know, I want to say 7+ years old. And so a lot of them are starting to fail. Technology's changed a lot. They're not being supported. We can't get replacement parts for them, so we need to get those upgraded so that we can maintain keeping track of all of our employees' time. There's some money for storm sirens. It's been several years since we budgeted for that, and I know that we get a request a lot of years for that and feel like that was important and rise to the level this year that we needed to get 2 or 3 put in, depending on what size and locations we wanted to add there. Air tanks and line upgrades for the fleet department. The ones that they have right now are 20 years old, and so they lose a lot of compression in their lines, and so they want to get those replaced. Battery backups, they just need to do some of that to for the intersections to make sure that they are flashing whenever they go out so that we maintain safety in some of those that need to be replaced. There are 3 trucks. 3 trucks that are being replaced all have over 100,000 miles. There's a 95, 96, and then a 2005 model that are going to be replaced. The newer one is the engineering, the other 2 are for public works. A 12-foot mower for Parks Department that was requested, a Gradle for the Public Works Division for
Okay, explain
cleaning
that
out.
to me.
What is a Gradle? I've never seen that term.
Ever,
I
can you
thought
come
it
up
was
and
a
explain that?
misprint. I thought it was a
please?
grader.
Please.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know either.
I thought it was a typo myself, but
I thought it was German.
Gradle is similar to a backhoe. It's a little bigger version, but it gives us more mobility out on the highways or the streets areas. So what it does, instead of digging one area and have to move into other traffic to load, this actually will rotate around on the bed of the truck and dump into the truck. So it gives us a lot more areas where we can start cleaning our ditches and stuff.
Is that one unit?
That is one unit, yes.
Okay.
It's all on that truck-mounted piece of equipment.
And that's
We used
the
to have-
truck as well, or?
We used to have one. We stopped using it for a while. It's a 1989 model. But we want to get back some of our ditch cleaning, and this is going to be a good opportunity to do that, so.
Okay.
All right.
This thing then, you can, operating on the back of a truck, you can dig out ditches with it?
Yes, we can also get different attachments that can do mowing hills off the side of the stuff.
Does it come on the truck already?
Yes, it's already mounted on the truck. It's a
Fun.
one-piece component.
All right, and then our last 2 items there, wayfinding signage, which is, of course, we'll move on to the next phase of signs there from the Enid First team. And the library retaining wall, this has been submitted several years in CIP and not done, and we think we can just do some repairs with our concrete crew to get it through for right now. And so we put in money.
Last year, we talked about it and then ditched it. It was quite a bit more, wasn't it?
well, it was 50,000 or something like that. I know Jenny and I have discussed it. There's a piece on the east, this would be the
Southeast corner.
southeast corner that's fallen out. This is an intent to try and repair that and other places there. What we're looking at is, and this has been discussed before, I think in the future, I don't know if it's next year, 5 years, or 10 years from now, we would like to look at re-landscaping that area, particularly maybe on the east side. There is an old historical tree there, a catalpa tree, I think that's been there since the run or something. It is getting rather old, and it's been hit by lightning or something a couple times, Jenny tells me, and it's, we do not want to do anything with that tree, but we do not know how much longer it will be. It blooms, so it's going to be around for at least another year. To us to look at that tree would probably be damaged, so in that re-landscaping.
Okay.
So we probably just want to wait and maybe repair the wall.
Cool.
We're trying to outlive the tree, I guess.
Right. So the 667,000 is what's for equipment for general fund, so this wraps up the expenses for general fund. Is there anything else in the general fund while we're on this topic that we want to discuss?
Is general government part of general fund?
Yes, it is.
You mentioned an assistant city manager position.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about that. I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I just know that when the last couple of times we talked, you had been of the opinion that it wasn't necessary. What's changed?
Well, I think what's changed is probably, in fairness to the city, probably to me, that position, we need that position at some point. I think I've gone for, limited that position after the last assistant city manager left, Joan, and I think it's been about 2 years. So I wanted to put that back in there so that I could bring it back. I think it would be good. It would be good to distribute some of the duties probably that I have and departments that I'm supervising now, but also I think it's good for stability and longevity of the city. And so put it in there. We're probably, for various reasons, not going to be looking to hire it July 1st because we probably have to have it posted now. But I do look to bring it back, and I think it'll be good for the city.
Okay. I don't necessarily have any problem with it. I just know it's something that previously had been
Right.
taken out as of just due to not being necessary.
It is helpful, too, if for some reason, our revenue projections don't come in or something, we can also delay that to help. So, but
Okay.
I thought this was the time to bring it back, and I'm thinking maybe
It's fine.
maybe some other people think the same.
I would agree. Anybody else?
I agree too.
I do too. I just think it'll make your life easier.
That's doing your job.
All right. We are going to move on now to Health Fund, which starts on page 87. So the Health Fund is an internal service fund for the city. So all of the departments within the city pay money into this fund, and it collects that money as revenue to pay out premiums and claims on our health insurance plan that we offer our employees. The employees' portion that they pay as a payroll deduction is also deducted and put into this fund as revenue. And so last year, we did have a balanced budget. If you see right up here in the FY18 budget, you can look in this middle part. This is a projection of where we're coming in this year. Revenue is coming in a little lower. A lot of that's based on turnover in positions, and we just really haven't had as many retirees participate as in the past. But our projection on our claims are very high. We've had a very high expense year. The last 2 months, it's been $1.1 million in claims, whereas a 2-month period, it typically is around $600,000 or $700,000. We will be bringing back an appropriation in June to you guys so that we can cover appropriations. They do have over $1 million fund balance to be able to draw down to be able to cover these expenses. But sometimes it just happens. Never know, that's why we have that reserve there. And we are budgeting this next year to keep the same plan going on. And with that, we do show a deficit budget of about $100,000. These are all just estimates based on trends that are happening in the industry and what Blue Cross Blue Shield and Holmes Murphy, our consultants, are telling us. And so that's what was done to base all of these numbers on. As we look at revenues individually, there's not a lot of change. You can see general fund and enterprise funds. Revenue in the red bars are coming in slightly lower. That's due to turnover in positions, or maybe less people had family coverage and took single coverage compared to in the past. Employee contribution, that breakdown, we had budgeted maybe a little too low, so we went ahead and increased that for the next year. And then here's where you can see that retirees are down a little bit, and so we did adjust that accordingly to not account for as much revenue from retirees next year. And then whenever it comes to expenditures, you can see where we're coming in. Health fees were coming in a little lower than what was projected. Those claims are coming in significantly higher, and everything else is pretty close. I mean, it makes up a very small portion of the fund. And so really, this is where all of it comes from and those trends. Any questions specifically on the health fund? One other good thing too is the ACA laws. We do not have to pay the fees associated with that anymore, which saved us about $60,000 in this budget. So,
How many employees are covered by our health fund?
460?
460?
Yes.
Out of what? 480? 500?
474, I think, was the number on the full-time employees. 474 is what's in next year.
That's an unbelievable number. That's good enough. But it's expensive.
It is very expensive. It's a great benefit for our employees. All right. Anything else on health before we move on? All right. These next three funds that we're going to talk about, pretty simple funds, so we're just going to go over them each individually. Community Development Block Grant, CDBG. I know you guys are very familiar with that fund. It starts on page 139. At this point, we do not know what the funding allocation from HUD is going to be. We've done an estimate in there, I think $400,000 for next year. Of course, there are people here that are on the funding committee. The funding committee will make recommendations to you guys. You will decide at that time how that money is spent, but this is just the budgeted number, so we have appropriations. Looks very similar to last year. It's a slight decrease in the.
I think one notable thing on the CDBG fund, I think we have maybe one more year of HUD funding. Maybe not HUD funding, but the HUD payment for the Section 108 loan.
Yes.
So that will be a milestone. That was a 20-year loan
It's off in August of
should pay
19.
off in the next budget year. So
Great.
potentially, assuming the federal government gives us the same or similar amount of money, you will have more money to allocate.
We did receive an official word, a letter from the mayor, accepting an increase for 18,584. So that should be this week that we get our official notification.
Have I given you that?
No, I haven't seen it.
It's in the mail.
Yeah, it's in the mail.
Okay,
It's good news.
it is.
So that additional that you're talking about, is that $168,000 that we'll receive?
I think roughly it's, do we have that line itemed in?
Yeah,
budget?
the payment schedule for the HUD loan is on page 144, and the amount that's due in August, or for this year, is $172,000, and then August of 19 will be $181,000 to pay it off. Then it's over. August of 19 is when it pays off, so this budget that we're talking about now will be the last one that it gets to be in.
Great.
All right. So that one will come back with how those dollars are spent, but we just have appropriations as a placeholder. We should have plenty of appropriations even to cover the 418. Depends on the amount of carryover from previous years, but we have enough in there right now from what we've drawn down. We may draw down some of that before the end of the year, so there will still be sufficient appropriations.
And when do we set that, the actual program funding? What time of the year will we,
Stephanie, can you come up and brief
just refresh my memory?
refresh us all that?
They run together.
Yes.
Well, this year, it took the federal government a while to tell its agencies how much funding they were getting, so they tried to get it out as quickly as possible. Normally, by May 15th, we turn in that grant application with all the allocations. It slowed us down a little bit, but we're still going to try to get that done. The allocation meeting will be May 10th, whatever Tuesday is that correct? We've been going back and forth today trying to figure out a date for that meeting. And then the first meeting in June, that's when I'll bring it before the mayor commissioners at this meeting, at the regular meeting, and for approval
Okay.
of all those.
Thank you. It's okay, we'll have them all over again, just because, tradition.
Any question on the budget side of the CDBG?
Well, I'd just like to say that I think we ought to take in future consideration for CDBG department, possibly have an assistant in that department, if possible, because that's a pretty weighty position to be in. Just for the future.
Stephanie actually took a pay cut to that department a couple years ago when we were doing budget stuff.
Well, I think part of her salary is paid by general government, part of it's paid by CDBG.
That's correct.
And then there's some shared staff with admin, I think, when necessary, but that could be incorrect.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true?
But I'm also.
And I know Stephanie's getting an intern as well, I believe.
Oh, she's.
But I am getting an intern.
Yes.
Congrats.
Kristen, Kristen's a great help, if that's what you,
No, that's why I mean just the, the help with the paper pushing part.
everyone here is very helpful when I need it.
Yeah, but Stephanie, you're also doing other things outside of just dealing with CDBG. And I'm aware of that.
Thank you, Derwin, or Commissioner Norwood. It's very nice of you to think of me like that. Yeah, I do both grants and CDBG administration.
I mean,
This-
because, when we
This
think
is one of the
of,
first years the money amount has gone up. It's come down from about $900,000 a year to less than $400,000. So it's finally gone the other way.
and that's the reason why I'm just bringing it up, for future consideration. I'm not saying it's just something that we, have to do, but we ought to consider it. because anytime we can help someone out, you get productivity. I mean, you weigh people out, you kill them. You know, I'm a business owner, so I know.
I hear
When it's all on your shoulders and you have to do all the paperwork and, you know, do it all yourself, it's tough. So I'm just saying, let's think about it.
Right. Next fund is sinking fund. It's on page 141. Not sure if all of you are familiar with sinking fund and how that works, but by ordinance, we can levy judgments in excess of $20,000 through an estimate of needs process with the county. When those are approved by commission and they get filed, we pay out the individuals. We file the claim, they go on ad valorem tax, and then we get back money through that process. So it's just really a pass-through of paying out money and receiving it back through an estimate of needs process there. So we always budget $300,000. It's usually significantly less than that. We haven't passed any new levies in, I think, 2 years. It's a 3-year payback process. So we should be getting the last one on the ones that are on there currently, and there have not been new ones. And then the last one up here, Advanced Development Authority, this is on page 180, is the exact same budget as the current year budget. Mike Cooper turned in the exact same request for expenditures. His contract was recently renewed. It had been set to expire in June of 19, but back in September of 17, we renewed it through June of 2022. So, and it's the same contract amount. Really the only thing that's changed is we did make some program changes to the scholarship program to try and up the amount being used there and utilized. We did add online classes as an option through the Advanced Development Authority. They voted on that, and then we brought that to here. This will be really the first semester that people could use that online, so we hope to see that that helps trend that usage back up a little bit.
What do our scholarships usually amount to in a year?
The last few years, the last couple of years have been about 5,000. There are times, there was back in six-figure amounts at one point, but we're projecting this year, if people do use it this semester, that we may come in about $10,000 in usage in the program.
One of the big reasons that changed and went down was the amount that the federal government provided for educational subsidies for service people increased, so.
Yeah, at one point, the military was doing 75% tuition assistance, and the city of Enid chose to step up and say, we want you to be in the community, we want to help as well, we'll pay the other 25%. And that's how the tuition assistance actually started. From that point, the military has evolved to the point where they pay 100% now for active duty military. So our program has evolved so that it now picks up books, which wasn't covered before for the active duty military, and covers tuition assistance for family members of military people that are in the community. And there were specific before against using online courses because online course, the thoughts about online courses from 20 years ago is not the way it's thought of today. I mean, there used to be paper mills out there, and what they were trying to do is get away from that. Now there's a lot of respected institutions that use a lot of online courses, and it really does help the military that are deployed. Because you might work 12-hour days while you're overseas. The other 12 hours you either sleep or do nothing. And a lot of them are working on their classes, so I think it helps them out a lot. So, sorry about that, but that's kind of the history about it.
It's great information. Any other questions on Advanced Development Authority?
When we make the trip to DC, I know we invite members of the Advanced Development Authority to come, but we don't fund any of them. And I don't know that we should fund all of them, but I'm wondering what you guys think about funding a representative from the VDA. Now, I know the mayor goes and he's a member of the VDA, but he's representing the city so I don't know if that's something we should think about, not think about, but if we're ever going to talk about it, this is the right time to talk about it.
That's a decision that certainly could be made. We would need to have some budget dollars.
Yeah.
Probably need to have a policy and ensure that we could do that, but.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
Seems like Cooper is the most important part of that.
well, and his is
Well, that's also a Chamber of Commerce function and not a City of Enid function. It's driven by the Chamber of Commerce,
But the VDA is a city committee, right?
and there'll be a lot of VDA members that attend.
They do, yeah. And we do have some that fund it themselves.
I've been going for 22 years.
Yeah. And you got it mostly fixed, so.
Do what?
You got it mostly fixed, so we appreciate it. Okay, thank you.
The next one up is golf, and I'm just going to go over a few slides, and then Michael Leake is the Director of Operations here to answer questions that you may have on the golf course budget.
What page is golf on?
Golf Fund is on page 96. All right, so the same type of setup where we have the adjusted budget, the projection, and the proposed budget. So the adjusted budget's different than what you see in your comparison here of original budgets to original budget, which is required for the budget book. Adjusted budget, you can see we had a slight deficit budget. That was due to the rollover encumbrance for the restrooms that were redone out there. There was about 40 or 50,000 that was encumbered, close to fund balance. We redid the appropriations for that so that we could pay for that restroom facility. And see where we're actually coming in quite a bit lower on both revenue and expenses. Next year, we have balanced budget proposed for that, and we'll go through the revenues and expenses and kind of what's causing some of that. You can see I have it broken down here. I've grouped all the golf revenue versus the transfer from general fund. Right here, the blue column, those numbers were put together based on recommendations from a consultant that we had come in a couple of years ago and some changes that they recommended that we implement to try and improve sales out of Meadow Lake. At the time that we did the budget last year, we had only been operating that for 3 months. We now have 15 months worth of data, and you can see here in red what we've done and project to do through the end of this year here in red. Based on the reality of what we've experienced out there with implementing those changes, we've come back and we think that this green amount here is a better revenue number for us to shoot for and actually achieve with the leadership of Michael out there. Because Golf Fund does not have a fund balance to draw down from, that means that we have to make up whatever the difference is as a transfer from general fund, because they cannot have a deficit budget without a fund balance to draw from. So that automatically leads to an increase needed here in general fund transfer to make them have a balanced budget for the year. We're going to talk about some of the expenses on the next slide of what's causing that. Again, personnel services is the same type of thing. We're guesstimating on what it was going to take as far as personnel to run it based on the consultant's recommendations. This is what we've actually expended. We think we need a little bit different staffing to be able to run the course and the pro shop, the amount of hours that they're open. We also anticipate that there are a couple of retirements that are going to happen this year from some longtime employees that have some payouts, so we had to factor that in so that they had enough appropriations to be able to do that. Their contractual services went up slightly. That had to do with an ice machine that needs to be replaced and some irrigation system maintenance that had not been budgeted for previously. And then we have maintenance and operations is actually a slight decrease for the year, and that has to do with cost of goods sold for both the pro shop and for the 19th hole. As that revenue went down, the cost of goods sold also went down as part of that. And then capital, you can see here, we had the restrooms for next year. It's decreased down to $15,000. There's a sand top dresser that we have in the budget right now. They're using, I'll let Michael explain to you what they're using right now for that. So.
Called a rake. No.
Any questions right away? Okay, so I do want to point out that a year ago, we took over operations of the pro shop, the driving range, as well as the snack bar. So like Aaron just said, we kind of went off of projected base of what a consultant told us would have happened. So our revenue was decreased based off of his projections, but so was our cost of goods sold. So this kind of came in about the same. We have adjusted that for the next year. The sand top dress I'm looking for, we have a piece of equipment that is 20 years old, actually 20+ years old, and it's actually a fertilizer spreader that I'm using as a sand top dresser, and it is actually not usable anymore. So that's kind of a necessity, and that's the one piece of capital equipment that I'm asking for. We do have 2 payouts for retirees, and I think that's a significant increase in our personnel expenditures. I think one of them has been there for 15 years, the other one I think about 12. So that's why your personnel costs are going up. I do want to say we have a lot of bright and positive things going on at the golf course. A year ago today, we had 78 members. Right now, we have 104. This has been the past 2 or 3 months. I think when the transition took place, maybe some people were a little bit leery about everything going on. We didn't have a lot of people approach me as far as hosting events. We have 7 events coming up in May, several of them on weekdays. So I'm trying to promote more middle of the week tournaments that don't take up play from our members, give them a little bit of a break on that. We have one on a Thursday, we have 3 on a Friday. Coke Nitrogen's coming out with their employees next Friday, and they're gonna have 80 people, they're buying them drink tickets. I've looked at a lot of different changes as well. We had some contracts with some third-party tea time companies where they would give discount tea times, and it was really kind of discounting our course to death, I think. And there was actually an article in Golf Oklahoma magazine last month about this, and we've had 4 courses shut down in Oklahoma in the past 6 months, and all of them were doing these services. Golf Now, if you've ever seen that on advertisement, that service, most of the money that they're paying for those fees goes to the service and not to the course, and they're discounting it as much as half off. So it really hurts, and I think that we have a value, we have a worth of our course, and I don't want to discount it to death. I think we can utilize off times, twilights, some specials, but I don't want to do that on a consistent basis. So we have just gotten rid of that starting in March, and this March we actually hit our revenue by $15,000 on the positive side. So I think we're turning the corner, and I'm looking for next year. I know that the transfer kind of looks a little bit scary because it's going up, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to be able to hit our numbers. And I think we have a negative fund balance, and I think we need to start working kind of against that to get it back to where it's not a negative fund balance. So hopefully next year we can say we hit our numbers, our fund balance is going to go down from negative, I think 110,000, whatever it is, and actually go closer to 0. A few other things. This winter has kind of killed us. If you notice, you haven't had to mow your grass yet because we had 2 Marches, I kind of say.
Yeah.
March came and then March came again.
Yeah.
So the National Golf Foundation, they do rounds played. Every course submits their rounds for each month. And for this year, January, February, March, Oklahoma is down 20% on rounds. So that just shows you the weather. And April was actually worse. So that was just January through March. And actually, we had a great March at Meadow Lake. In April, we had all of our weekends were kind of, we had tournaments that had to cancel because we had rain. We had some kind of winterish weather. So I'm anticipating May and June to come in as really good months. Those are typically our best months of the year. And a few other things. We also have, we bring in sales tax. So we generate $550,000 in revenue. So there's another $30,000, almost $25,000 to $30,000 that is directly coming into the city for our portion of the 4.5% sales tax that's not really accounted for there. So that's a little bit of a drop in the bucket, but that's also something we do. We're a quality of life issue, in my opinion. We have a lot of retirees that come out there every day. They walk, that's their enjoyment. We host a number of fundraisers that benefit nonprofits. We just had a tournament last month that I was kind of involved with that raised over $30,000 for Booker T. Washington. And we're a facility in Enid that can facilitate those types of events that raise money as well. And I think you look around the state, I don't think there's any really municipal golf courses that are making money, and there's very few, if any, that are breaking even. So we have 60% of our budgets in personnel, and that's just part of the city having good benefits for our employees. We only have 6 full-time employees, so we're staffed lean as it is. We have 16, we're mainly staffed with seasonal part-time, but we cover 15 hours. We're open 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. Snack bar is open 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we run a cart.
What kind of condition is the maintenance building in out there?
It's not in very good shape.
Still kind of hobbling along?
It's hobbling along. We have water that floods through it floods in every time it rains. It's a flat roof that's caved in, so water just puddles and then drains through. There's mold in the ceiling, so I would invite anybody that would want to come out to the course and do a tour, send me an email. I'll show you the maintenance facility, but it's in really sad shape, and I hate to send and see employees that have to work in that condition, especially in the wintertime, and they're working on equipment, and so.
Yeah, I can't remember I know we've looked at the cost of repair or replacement.
Yeah, I think.
in what order of magnitude are we
Engineering's
talking?
extensively looked at the ability or the feasibility of repairing the building. It's not feasible. So what has stopped us from just solving that problem is it's going to take money. It's probably going to take, I don't even want to throw out a number because it probably won't be right, but we have talked about a metal type building, probably putting it in the back or some different place, and it's past time to be looking for that. However, because of funding, we haven't done it. So if there's some way we can figure that out in this next year's budget, we're all open to doing that.
How big a building is it?
I'm looking at about a 5,000 square foot building if we did just a metal building.
It's a great turnaround from past years, Michael.
Thank you. And I would like to point out that so this year we budgeted for $157,000 for the transfer from the city. The previous year was $252,000. We're coming in at this year's $48,000, I believe, that we're
You're going in the right direction.
short, right? But that's still $50,000 less than the year before.
I hear.
So,
Well, I want to say there's several areas that need to be improved, and this is per the consultant too. The bathrooms obviously were, of course, bathrooms. We did get those.
they're well
repaired.
received by the.
They're replaced. We did prefab bathroom.
Excellent.
The maintenance building needs to be replaced, and the consultant, as you'll remember, mentioned that the clubhouse is a detriment for us when we are looking at competing with Pheasant Run or others. So, but the next priority is to get the maintenance building resolved, and then there'll be the clubhouse. If we want to resolve the one thing, the consultant, in fact, maybe we sometime need to show you guys that again. The consultant was very complimentary of a lot of things at Meadow Lake. We were one of the best golf courses, if not the best one in town. That includes competing against the Oakwood Country Club.
And that's to the point, we just hosted, this Monday, we had the 6A Boys Regional, which is the third year in a row we've had it. And there were 12 or 13 schools that came in from Oklahoma City. Most of them came in Sunday. They stayed the night. They played practice rounds. And, to have them come 3 years in a row, that we must be doing something right, and they must enjoy the course. So, but I do think, to Gerald's point, there's a lot of people that come out to Meadow Lake to play the golf course, and they might leave and go to Pheasant Run to enjoy their patio.
Yeah.
You're the director of operations, is that correct?
Yes, and I'm also the golf course superintendent, so I'm the only certified applicator for chemicals on site. So my duties range from fixing irrigation leaks to spraying constantly. I spray greens once a week or so in the season.
And I know in the staffing here, it shows there's also a golf professional.
Yes.
What exactly does that person do?
So Steve Darnold, he's a PGA Class A professional. He manages the inventory in the pro shop. He gives lessons, not on the clock. His lessons are given off the clock. He works in the pro shop 40 hours plus per week, working the register.
He doesn't actually supervise anybody.
He does the golf staff in the golf shop. So there's two.
He's kind of your assistant manager.
He is. He does club repair as well. So the gripping, and actually, Golf USA shut down a couple months ago, so we've actually experienced an increase in people coming in and purchasing stuff out of our pro shop. Club repair, he's swamped with trying to regrip clubs because nobody else grips clubs in Enid anymore. So he does that as well.
Great.
Question. So the city is technically a nonprofit organization, correct? Or no?
Kind of.
Yes, we qualify as a different entity under IRS rules, but
So I mean, like,
yes.
can donations be made to city entities? Like,
Yes, they could.
fundraisers, like, can the golf course do, like, or a city entity, can they do a fundraiser of any, or anything like that?
We can. I think
Is
that
that legal?
one of the challenges with golf is and the consultant talked about this too, there's only so many people that golf.
Right.
And there may be some people that don't golf that would still want to contribute.
I just kind of had it off my head, but I didn't know if it was legal. So I just wondered if that was even a thing.
Right offhand, I don't know if there's any problem with somebody donating money. In fact, we've done that before. People have donated money for Ferris wheels, talking about donations for soccer parks. So yes, that would probably be helpful. I don't know that we have anybody that's lined up or approached, but that's a good idea. Maybe we should pursue that.
I know in the past, we've had a few things donated from our men's association if they had extra funds, but it was kind of on a smaller scale.
Seems
our
like
men-
making good progress.
Right, our men's association is growing. We have men's night on Thursday nights, so it's going on right now. And the past few weeks, we've had 40 plus, which is really it's a good turnout over what it was last year, so. And I've had a lot of other people that have approached me about considering a membership. So our memberships start July 1st, and I think that there's a lot of people considering getting a membership. We now have one that allows a golf cart, so you come in, you have a membership with a cart, you pay nothing when you come if you, and we ACH draft it monthly out of their checking account if they want to do that as well.
Are you gonna advertise that over the next couple months? That the
Yes,
season's starting?
I've kind of been doing more Facebook targeted advertising lately and more social media type and less kind of radio and print. But yes, we will be, and hopefully get with Steve and having him help us with his staff too as well.
I think it's impressive that you've gone from 250,000 to 50,000 in the deficit.
Well, I think we probably need to be clear.
Right.
I don't know that's what the deficit is. Do you want to clarify that, Aaron, what we're talking about on the transfer?
Right, so the transfer moved from 157 up to $300,000 because we have to fully fund them if we're gonna have a golf course. They don't have a fund balance to draw on, so it is an increase of $142,000 from the city to the golf course to meet their budget for the year.
Right.
We think long-term, though, that this difference, where we're buying all the product and receiving whatever revenue there is from it is going to pay dividends?
I don't see us, I mean, I don't think we're ever going to get to where we're breaking even, but I think the added value we have is the quality of life and the, I think when businesses look at coming to any city, especially our size, one of the things they look at is where, they'll look at a golf course. Do you have a golf course? And it's not just the country club. They look at good public course. I think if we can stay in the $150,000 to $200,000 transfer range, I would be happy. I think I would be happy with that.
Yeah, I'm not looking for profit either, but the snack bar and the pro shop should show a profit.
They do.
If they're
Yes.
not, then we
Yes,
should
they do. Our margins on that,
eliminate those.
we just weren't selling as much as was projected by the consultant. So in my estimation, all the numbers I've looked at for the past 12 months, the snack bar generates about $25,000 in profit. I have looked at margins, and we've increased a few, our beer sales is one that we sell a lot of, so I increased that to where we're on pace with other courses, and that's increased the margin that we have on that and increased our revenue on the snack bar. Pro Shop, we make about a 30-35% margin on all of our sales, and a lot of our tournaments, they pay in credit to the Pro Shop, so that's one way that we have tournaments, and it greatly benefits the sales in there. I would think we do in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $40,000 in profit in the Pro Shop as well in a year.
Aaron, I see the 300,000.
You see it.
Yeah, with the, you mentioned Golf USA closing. Do you intend to increase the amount of products that you have on hand and take advantage of that?
We have in certain spots, we have a very limited space in our Pro Shop, so
Yeah, no.
I think, but we have, we've brought in more women's apparel, more soft goods, hats, shirts, and we have a lot of closeouts. So our strategy is our clients aren't going to buy the $80, $90 shirts. So we buy closeouts off of kind of name brands, and we mark them in the $40 neighborhood.
No, I think that's
but
the niche.
I do think that we will see an increase in sales of, because I really don't think Academy picks up a lot in the golf market.
No, I don't either. All right, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
The next fund that I have to talk about is EMA, so we're ready to move down the agenda unless there's something else on the city part we would like to talk about right now.
Aaron, just one moment. Michael, is that your son? This is my son, yes. Can you go ahead and introduce him? He's bigger than I remembered him.
Tell me your name.
What?
Can you tell me your name? What's your name, bud?
Kel.
Kale. And how old are you?
Talk right here.
7.
He's 7 years old, and he loves golf. He's out there with me all the time. He enjoys the course, and
Somebody could pull that microphone
Yeah.
out.
No, it's funny.
He's been on the course with me since he was little, and he played last week on 9 holes from the front tees, and he shot a 49 at 7 years old. So he was asking me just now if we're going to be able to have time to go play some holes. So.
I would like to have what he had for lunch today.
Yeah.
Glad you're here. I like your tie. Aaron?
All right, Mayor, we're ready to move on to EMA unless there's something else that we want to talk about on the city portion of the agenda tonight. All right. It's you. So number 3 on the agenda, Mayor, is where we're ready to move to.
You talked so long, my iPad went off, Aaron.
I'm sorry. There's a lot of numbers to cover in a very short amount of time.
Somebody read it before I pull it up. Item 3,
Yes.
we'll now recess to convene as the Enid Municipal Authority. All of the trustees of the Enid Municipal Authority special session are in attendance. Item 5, we'll now convene as the Enid Municipal Authority special meeting. Item 6, discuss and take necessary action. Is that where you want to be?
Yes.
6, necessary action on fiscal year 2018-2019 Enid Municipal Authority financial plan. Aaron?
All right. EMA starts on page 148. Overall, this year, we are projecting revenues of $53 million. Personnel is $4.1 million of that. Operations, $30.8 million. Capital outlay is almost $1.2, and debt services of a little over $17 million. And we show a balanced budget in this fund for this year. Personnel makes up about 7%. Operations is 58. Capital's 2, and then the last 32 is debt service. When we look at that compared to the current year that we're in, year over year, you can see we have an increase in revenues of $5.1 million. Personnel increased $110,000. Operations $3 million. Capital outlay went down $34,000, and debt services increased by $2 million. Then we have a slide on each of those areas. When we look at the revenue for EMA, the majority of it is made up by utility services. We have water, stormwater, trash service, sewer. There's some miscellaneous utilities. And then there is the sales tax. Sales tax makes up 33%. The other 67% is made up by utility revenues. Last year, the sales tax was 36% and utility revenues was 64%. So we have seen quite an uptick in the utility revenue from the water that we talked about earlier in the overview. Here's the breakdown of the revenue year over year. Water, you can see we have an increase from 13.75 this year to 18.5, 4.75 million increase in water sales. Stormwater, $50,000 increase. Trash service dumpster rate increases, $100,000 increase. The miscellaneous for $40,000 there was sales or interest, and sales tax increased by that 1.33% coming in, that we increased it for 5.133 this year. For expenses on EMA, which start on page 149 and 150, you can see overall the increase in personnel is $110,000. Operations went down $897. Transfers went up by $3.9 million. Capital outlay went down $34,000, and debt payments again increased by $2 million for that same 5.33 increase that we saw as an increase in revenue.
What made up most of that increase in transfers?
I have a slide when we get to transfers.
Oh, okay.
So this is when we look at it by department. So this is where we talk about the EMA departmental, and then we have this pages up here starting on page 156 and going through 175. EMA operations, the increase is 4.997. That really is 3 things that make that up. School bond expense that was removed, that we don't have to pay that excess out to the schools is about $1 million of that. The transfers out did increase by 3.9, and then debt payments increased by 2, so they netted out to that $5 million number there. Other than that, the only large increase in any of the departments was the solid waste services. We did add a line to lease 3 additional trash trucks so that we have 6 in total that we would be leasing on a reoccurring basis. So we would have 2 out of every 3 years we would be turning in trucks and then getting new ones so that we can cut down on some of that maintenance and have our trucks up and running a lot more of the time than we have had in the past. And so we still continue to feel like that's the best option and would like to add those 3 leases. That's the increase here that actually was $173,000 that we added. They cut out some other areas to try and help offset that a little bit. And then minor changes down the rest of the departments. The public utilities management only went up because we added that position for the assistant, administrative assistant for public utilities. The transfers now are on this slide, Ben. Mr. Zell, sorry. The increases here, we have general fund, the increase there for 1.5 million, all of that plus a little it flowed through to police and fire. The 1.57 increase to police and fire came through EMA, through general fund to give to police and fire. Street and alley increased $225,000. That was some additional funding to provide for some asphalt and crack seal and additional maintenance materials that the street department needs to be able to maintain our roads at a better level. EEDA went down. That's all due to payouts on incentives and contracts that are there. And then the others for capital, street improvement, sanitary sewer, stormwater, water capital are all based on what projects got funded and were prioritized during the budget process. And we'll go through each of those projects on Monday whenever we have our budget meeting. And then the Central National Bank Center is the same transfer as current year. So that makes up the $3.9 million increase in EMA transfers out. EMA equipment, just under $1.2 million. We had a lot of the requests this year were actually for the landfill solid waste department. Over half, or around half the funds are for that. Litter trailer, mule, the rear load trash truck, the roll-off truck, and the semi-truck are all for that department. They're the one most in need this year for new equipment to be used. There are 3 trucks that are in the budget, 2 for utility maintenance and 1 in water production. And again, all of these trucks, 2007, 2008, 2011, but they're heavily used trucks that go in and out of fields and everywhere else. And so they get a lot of wear and tear on them. We also have a mower in there for mowing, I think, right-of-way stuff. And then an excavator, a new excavator, the one that they have is more than 10 years old, and it's a daily use piece of equipment to do all those repairs on water lines and that come up. The roll-off truck and the semi-truck, you will see those are a repeat from the current year budget. Those were delayed in this year's budget to be able to buy the vac truck that we needed, which rose to a higher level at this point. So they did get prioritized to get back in the budget for next year. And then the last one we have here on EMA is the debt payments. You'll see the 1998 note will pay off in August of 18. That's why there's a decrease of $48,000. We only have 1 payment to make instead of 2 in next year. The other slight decreases on the 2000A and the 2002A are just due to interest as the balance is getting smaller. The school note pays off in June of this year, and so that one will go away. We won't have any payments to make on that next year, and then those funds, of course, have been reallocated down to the CAW. Same payments for the AMI system, the wastewater treatment plant, and the water towers, which are the next 3 that are listed up there. The 2012 line of credit was for the downtown event center. Those payments are set up to be escalating principal payments over time. That note actually pays off in July of 2020, so we still have a few years left on that. And then we have the 2016 note that we just took out in December 2016 for CAW Phase 2. And then you see down here future CAW payments. So this is the reserve that has the rest of the CAW sales tax in it, as well as the $2 million that we set aside in utility revenue so that it doesn't get spent, that it's set aside specifically for the CAW project. So that's that large $2.9 million increase you see there is to capture those additional sales tax from the school and for that utility rate increase. So that's what I have on EMA, unless there's anything else specific there you would like to talk about.
What will our future call payments look like 5 years from now?
Astronomical.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great question, Mayor. Today, actually, Gerald and I spoke with John Wolf, our bond counsel for Municipal Finance Services, and it's based on a lot of variables. It's going to depend on what interest rates we can lock in, what the final construction loans are taken out for. We are estimating somewhere in the $18 million range a year for debt payments related to CAW. That's based on getting some great interest rates for a large chunk of it and things coming in on budget. And so we'll see as that comes out, because that can change a lot on that big of a loan. I mean, it could be a range, a couple million more or less than that, depending on a whole lot of factors.
Did you say fundraiser?
Aaron, are we going to go through the various departments that are under this?
We absolutely can go back and go over individual departments if you would like to do that, yes.
Well, I was just, the wastewater treatment operation is one that I'm interested in.
On page 172.
Yes.
What would,
The contract with this company to operate our wastewater treatment plant, and it's never been completely clear to me, do we have other employees there, or do all of the employees at the wastewater treatment plant work for the contractor?
I can answer that question. Stover Group does everything at the wastewater plant. We've contracted them for their expertise. We've had them for, I'm going to say, about 5 years. It may have been a little bit more. They've got several employees out there. Lou works with them daily. Lou, do you want to go up and talk about the number of employees that Stover has? And
Well, I don't really care as long as they're paying them. I just wondered if we had
Yes.
anybody we were paying other than what we're paying
Yes,
them.
that contract pays for them to run it with the operations. It includes some preventive maintenance.
Minor maintenance.
On minor maintenance.
We provide major maintenance.
Yeah, major maintenance, if a blower goes out or we have to repair something, like the generator, the backup generator went out, was it last year or this year? We have to pay for those. But we would have to pay for those whether we did it or they did it.
Well, I was just curious about that. I know there are a number of people working out there, and I didn't know whether they were getting paid primarily for their expertise, if they were actually also covering a payroll.
Yes, they are operators, and they've got a certain number of operators, and it's got somebody out there that I don't know who it is. Lou does.
They have Chris works out there as the supervisor, the superintendent right now. They have an additional 9 other employees that work 12-hour shifts, and they work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They perform all the minor maintenance within the facility. We perform the major maintenance. They are the operators of the facility.
Did they retain some of the employees 5 years ago?
Sir, I don't have.
No, I don't believe they did. We absorbed most or all of those employees. Many of those employees are still with us in other areas. Some have retired. Some have moved on. They're completely their employees to run, operate, and manage that operation. Typically, every year, with the contract that we have with them, they give us a renewal price that includes some kind of inflation factor. I'm assuming they did that. That's the number that we have in here now. The operations worked out pretty well over the last 5 or 6 years. So I think it's a good arrangement for the city. I know that maybe someday, not now, maybe someday, we may want to look at, would it be cost effective for the city, and could we get the expertise to do that again? I think with our challenges with Caw Lake and the way things are going right now, we don't have issues out there. And so I think they're doing a pretty good job overall. Ross Stover, the Stover Group, the folks that run that are It's Dr. Ross Stover and Dr. Enid Stover. They're PhDs, educate. I'm not sure where they got their education. I think it was probably from Oklahoma State, so it's probably premier. They do a lot of, they operate wastewater plants throughout the country. So
They're getting paid $100,000 a year for all of them. They're doing okay. $100,000 a month.
$100,000 a month.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions on that?
No.
Any other questions on any of the EMA? All right, Mayor, we're ready to move on down the agenda to EPTA.
Item 7.
Yes.
We'll now adjourn to convene as the Enid Public Transportation Authority. Item 8, all of the trustees of the Enid Public Transportation Authority are in attendance at the special meeting. And item 9, Enid Public Transportation Authority special meeting is now in session. Item 10, take the necessary action on the fiscal year 2018-2019 Enid Public Transportation Authority financial plan. Aaron.
Right, so on EPTA, so far this year, you can see in the adjusted budget, we had a deficit again that was due to some buses, the match part on some buses that had been encumbered in the previous year and rolled over, so that we had the funds to be able to do that. So far this year, we're projecting revenues to come in $53,000 under where we're at. That really all has to do with timing. It has to do with when grant funds are expended versus when we get the payment back. It's a very long process from the time of when we turn everything in. It goes through a process at ODOT. It gets audited there. We have to pull back up to send to them. Once they approve everything, it goes to a federal level. It goes through approval process there. And then maybe 30 or more days we get money back after that whole process has happened. So I don't anticipate that we will get that grant funding. It just may not be in the current fiscal year. So that's why that looks low. Also, in the projection, you see expenses are coming in under as well. Right now, the transit is projecting to come in almost $70,000 under where they're budgeted at for the year. They've been doing a great job with what they have out there. They've added 2 new driver positions because they've been so busy, and I know they've had a lot of record days as far as rides that have happened, and so I think there's a lot of great things going on out there. You'll see that the actual budget proposed for this next year has a decrease in both revenue and expense, but you can see that it is a balanced budget for this next year for the transit.
I see we have an increase in passenger fare of $10,000 projected over the next year.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah, right now, we're actually projecting for this year, if she continues on the trend she's at, we're budgeted at 55, and we think she may come in at 71,000 this year in passenger fare. So almost 17,000 over. So she's hustling, doing a great job out there on that. I know there are a couple of lines that have taken a little hit because of that, and that had to do with their advertising, because I know that the person who does marketing and advertising has been driving because they've had such a demand. So you see that's why that line actually went down a little bit on the advertising, but we picked it up in the passenger fare. So taking advantage of the resources that she has and putting them where she needs so that she can keep it running. She's doing a great job with that. You can see transit revenue overall, even though there's some lines that went down, we're pretty much spot on where we are budgeted this year, where we're coming in, and next year. Grant revenue, again, we're coming in low, but I'm not concerned. We do anticipate a slight increase in grant funding for next year, $5,800. And then you can see the transfer actually for the general fund is projected to go down next year. There's been a reduction in some of her expenditures, and a lot of that has to do with not applying for buses in the current year. There are 3 buses that have been approved. They're in the process of being built. We should receive those in the budget that we're talking about, budgeted year, and we anticipate in FY20 applying for another round of buses for transit. So then when we look at expenses here, you can see she's had some savings in personnel. I know sometimes maybe kind of difficult to get part-time drivers to stay on, so there's some turnover throughout the year that she has to deal with, but we did add 2 driver positions, which is why you see an increase in her personnel from last year to this year to account for those drivers that she needs to get that passenger fare up. Contractual services was actually a slight decrease, $300. Maintenance and operations went down $675, and then the decrease here in capital outlay, she doesn't have anything in there for this next year, whereas the buses were in there for this year. If there are specific questions, I think, yeah, Mary's here if you would like to ask her anything.
Yeah, I think, Mary, you need to come up and talk about some of the innovative things you're doing. You got some more money from long-term care, and you've certainly accepted the challenge the past year or two and made improvements.
Yeah, we received, we received $10,000 from the Older Americans Act with Long-Term Care Authority for this last year on a grant, providing free rides for those that are age 60 and over. We got a phone call 2 months ago that asked if we could use another $5,000 on that for those that are 60 and over, and use it up by June 30th. And we agreed that we would, so all individuals that are 60 and over now get to ride free throughout Enid. So we have that opportunity, which again has increased the number of people that are riding. We've just, our drivers are exhausted when they go home, but we've also, we even do some more weddings that have increased at 81 Ranch, providing rides to and from hotels to those places. We have increased even some of the trucking facilities that do maintenance. We've increased the number of rides that we're doing to the hotels for those places. It's just an outreach. We've gone out and people have seen us and heard more. And we just try to do as much as possible. We do a lot for the event center. I think we try to do as much as we can with the assistance that we receive from the city of Enid, and therefore we can turn around and provide that back to the other departments that we have around here. So we have increased the, for conferences, maybe tours downtown or going out to other facilities in the outlying areas around Enid. We've provided transportation for that as well. We probably could even try to do more. Even if I requested to hire more people, I don't have the equipment to do it right now. So hopefully we can increase that. The FTA, which is the Federal Transit Association, is looking at that to where they can provide more funding specifically for technology, more buses and vans, nationwide across the whole United States.
Are buses available on the state grant that are CNG yet?
Yes, those are available, and we can get a little more assistance from the state. However, we have to have the facility to provide the gas for those.
I'd like to, at some point, Gerald, know what, I know that, we're pumping a lot of CNG out of the ground here in Oklahoma. It'd sure be nice to be able to use some of it here. I'd like to know what it would cost to have at our, wherever it would need to be, that kind of infrastructure, so we could over time start transitioning the trash trucks and there's a huge cost saving there if we have the infrastructure in place.
Is there grant money for that?
There is, to help with those facilities as well, that we could look into.
What
and
is
provide it.
involved in the $219,000 in grant money? I understand the $389,000. That's a transfer.
The money that we receive on that is from the state of Oklahoma and the Federal Transit
Talking about grants
Association.
now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is a grant that comes, and I think accounting specifically uses our state that we, our money that we receive from the state under grant funds on that. So that is the money that we are subsidized from Oklahoma Department of Transportation.
Does that come on a consistent level, Aaron?
We file it on a monthly basis.
Yeah, we file it monthly, but it does take a long process to get those funds back. The last one that we've received right now is December of 17.
That's a big total.
Yes.
We can certainly look at those, just to follow up with Commissioner Ezell. We can look at CNG. We have looked at it a little bit before. Before my time at the city, and still a vestige of the past, there's an old CNG system out there that I don't believe is operational anymore out there. The issue that we ran into in the last few years when we looked at this is the low prices of gasoline. Didn't make it as, I guess, feasible. However, gas prices are going up again, so, and you're right.
Well, and it's
we do
used
produce
local
natural
resource.
gas.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's good, using natural gas is good for our local economy. If we can
And-
make it
and-
cost effective.
There's a
it
lot
sure-
of it out there.
Boy, there is, and, yeah.
A gasoline vehicle also, if we travel long distances, because we do take some medical passengers to Oklahoma City or Tulsa, or if we're going to an airport in those areas as well, it does get difficult to find fuel, and
Oh, no,
they
those
will need to
CNG
be
taps you can find them all over on the highways in Oklahoma City. So many of the fleets are transitioning, Chesapeake fleets, the Sandridge fleets are all transitioning over to that. So it's not that hard to find a CNG fill-up at this point. I mean, it's,
Even one south of Hennessy, about 5.
well, the Conoco on the east side does it. The ONG has their own over by now, but I mean, we have several commercial locations in Enid where you can go fill up a CNG tank.
They claim too that the engines last longer if you're operating them on CNG than it does on gasoline. It burns cleaner.
Yeah. I think it seems like that is a likely direction we may go eventually, but I'd like to know what it would cost to start moving that direction. Maybe we can't afford it now, but it'd be nice to have some rough idea.
Any other questions?
Good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, great job. Do you have I guess more a gut feel than actual numbers, because I don't think you keep track of every person that comes onto the transit, but.
We
can you
actually
tell-
do.
Do you? Okay.
We do it from a computer
Okay.
perspective, and we also, my dispatcher actually makes a notch for every passenger that calls in and rides.
Okay. Well, I'm specifically, you talked about the elderly, so I was glad to hear that. I know there's a lot of developmentally disabled that also use the services. Do you have any idea how big that number is?
I can pull those. We do track those numbers specifically because ODOT requires us to put those into the computer, and everything is ran by the computer, so our dispatch runs through those. I would probably guesstimate that we probably disabled, because we do break it down to the general public, the elderly, and the elderly/disabled.
Okay.
And so that is how it's broken down. We do have a large sum that's general, and I would probably say the other two, I'm going to say probably 30, 40%. It's a
Okay.
large number. Due to one of the aspects that we do provide for wheelchairs, and larger persons that are in a wheelchair, even though they can get in and out, we've provided transportation for a lot of those.
Okay. Thank you.
To me, the transfer is a big number, but it's one of the items that helps attract people to move to Enid, Oklahoma.
I
And
do
it's a
believe
good-
if you make a request associated with Google when you're looking to put a business in on the computer, or even if you're moving someone into the area, one of the first questions that they'll ask, well, it is the first question they ask, is what transportation is provided in the area.
Yep.
Great. Keep that ridership growing. That's
right.
fantastic.
Good job.
If there's nothing else on EPTA, then we can move down the agenda again.
Item 11, we will now adjourn to reconvene as the Enid City Commission. Item 12, discuss and take necessary action on the fiscal year 2018-2019 City of Enid budget.
All right. If there are not any other questions that I can address now, then we'll meet back Monday at 11. If there are questions, I'm glad to take them. Okay, we'll pick up with the CIP plan and engineering on Monday at 11 and go over all the projects that are in the budget for this next year.
We are adjourned.
Thank you for joining us for the Enid City Commission meeting. All meetings are broadcast on local cable channel 12 and in high definition on channel 112. In addition, the council meeting is live streamed on the web at enidtv.org. If you have any questions or comments regarding this broadcast, please visit the City of Enid website at enid.org.